So now we're going to be working on Alice's hair, and I've skipped over laying down my base colors because that's pretty boring. There's nothing much to see. The only thing special, this is all just on a layer on top of everything else, except for over here where her hair is behind her face. And so for that, I just made another layer on the very bottom, and boop, there it is. Any place where her hair was going to be in the back, I laid the colors down there. It's just a little trick. It saves you work, and it's not going to make any difference when you go to put your highlight on. Okay, so we're going to take our highlight color and we're going to make a new layer on top. Alright, and now here's what you want to do. So this is the brush size I'm going to be using for the most part, and it's just kind of a mid-range size. You can use a tinier size if you want the hair to look really realistic for this particular technique anyway, or you can use a big one if you want to look sort of chunky and cartoony. But we're going kind of in the middle. And then all we're going to do is we're going to start laying down strokes with the brush, following the direction that her hair is going. And this is kind of important because you don't want lines that fall outside of this sort of direction of flow, whatever it is, because then it's going to look weird, and then there's really no point in doing it this way. You might as well just lay down solid colors. Okay, so we're just trying to give a sort of impression that she has real hair and it's made up of pieces instead of chunks. Okay, now people talk about doing colors for things, they always just kind of assume you'll know what colors to pick, and I never do. So here you can tell that my darkest color is a little bit more red. I'll often choose base colors that are kind of more red. It kind of makes things pop. But the important thing is that you don't just move your slider up and make your colors lighter, because that's going to make things flatten out a little bit. So my darkest color here is kind of a very saturated goldy orangey color, and my lighter shades are all a bit more yellow. And so this is my mid-range tone that I'm putting on right here, and this is probably the closest to the actual color I want my hair to be, and then we'll keep getting lighter as we put on our highlights. Just following the shape of her hair. Now when you get to a sort of bit like this, you can try to do long strokes and cover the whole thing at once, but that can be kind of a pain, especially if you're wobbly fingers like I am. So we're just putting down shorter ones. The only important thing here is that you want to make sure when you come up and join these lines you can't see where they join together, because otherwise you're going to have a weird disconnect right in the middle of her hair, which you're not going to want. So just make sure that your lines are smooth. Okay. Alright, and that's not too hard at all. And we're not too worried right now about making any of these places look lighter than any of the others, because we're going to have another highlights layer to take care of that. Okay, so already my base color is pretty covered up by this lighter one, but it's kind of showing through and it gives it a little bit of a nice glow. And then we're going to wispy bits in a minute. Eyebrows, if you wanted to put your eyebrows on a separate layer, and then use your darkest color so they'd stand out a little bit more, you could put them on top. In this case, I'm just letting them kind of go under the hair, and then at the end I'll touch them up. Alright, so we're going to move up to our next highlight tone, and then I made a new layer for this too. You don't have to, but if you're prone to mistakes or changing your mind, you might want to. Now for this layer, we're not going to be quite as heavy-handed. We're just going to go over the places where we think there might be a reflection. So it's going to be along the top, or the places where the hair stands out the most. And we're not being too picky at all. Alright, so I'm just putting these on the curves. And this color, again, is a little bit less saturated, so a little less bright, even though it's lighter than the one we used right before it. So we're going to come on here, and where you put this is defined by the shape you drew for the hair, but it's also kind of defined by the lines you drew underneath. So I've got some big chunky lines here. So we're just laying these down kind of light. And by the way, if you use a tablet and you don't use keyboard shortcuts, learn you some. because they will save you so much time and trouble. So you don't even see me erasing things because I do it so fast like a ninja of mistakes. Or if your tablet has a button for things like that. Mine doesn't, although it seems to have one for everything else. Okay, there we go. Now that looks pretty good, and I'm going to see if I want... I just made another layer, and then this is going to be my lightest color. And so you can see how much we've moved. That was our darkest one, right there. And then our lightest one is going to be here. So we've moved a fair bit. And with this one, I'm going to put on even less than I did of the other ones. Just touching up the light points. But then we're going to have a little fun with this one. Okay, so a little bit here, a little bit here. And you can see I'm not going crazy with this one. Okay, now what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put on yet another layer, because they're free. Now we're going to make our brush tiny. I think this is about a 2-point brush for the size I'm working with. Okay, so this is going to be whatever brush size you were using. That's a little bigger than I want. This is going to be whatever brush size you were using for a basic plain line. So if you're using really thin lines in your drawing, you can make it thinner. So we're just going to go over the top. See me erasing there? No shame in it. And we're going to just lay down some thin lines. And you're going to pay the most attention to the areas where you've already got your most highlights. But you can put them down in the dark areas too. Just don't press too hard if you've got pressure control, because you don't want these to look like they're kind of floating on top. Now we're going to put some of these on top of these wispy lines. Just like this. And it's going to make her hair look less chunky. More like real hair. Which is a good thing if that's what you're after. And a few down here. And you see, you don't have to follow it all the way down. You just have to make sure that you can't see where they end. So as long as you can't tell, I won't tell. And you can make these go outside too if you want. I'm not right now, but if you want them to go outside the main line of your hair, that's fine. Then it'll look a little bit messier. But Alice brushes her hair probably 100 strokes every day. Okay. And that looks pretty good. And that's all there is to it.